Okay. Hey, well, I'm sitting here with Mr. Michael Edwards with the Chicago Loop Alliance, and I always like to begin by just kind of giving you a chance, kind of who are you? What's the Chicago Loop
Sure.
Alliance? Would love to hear it right from you.
Sure. So, Michael Edwards, President and CEO of the Chicago Loop Alliance. We are a 501c3 organization, and our mission is to create, promote, and manage a higher performing urban experience that is attractive to people as individuals, come down, have fun downtown, or investors who may want to make an investment in downtown property, business, what have you. All designed to make the downtown a better place for everyone.
Okay. And we were talking about this earlier, but I have a definition of what the loop is, and I think if you ask 10 different people will give you different answers. What is the Chicago Loops Alliance official? This is the loop.
Right. So we consider our boundaries inside the river. So the north, the Chicago River; to the west, the Chicago River; to the south, Ida B. Wells, formerly Congress Parkway, and then Michigan Avenue on the east.
Okay. And what I would love to kind of hear your overall perception is, how is the loop doing?
Well, the loop is doing fine.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as a promoter. I'm saying that as fact, because coming out of the pandemic, we began to use data to really analyze where downtown is and where it's going. And we found that there wasn't a lot of good information about the current status of the loop. So we had, prior to the pandemic, pedestrian counters up on State Street, for example. And those, meant a lot, but things were really rocking downtown before the pandemic. And so that became the basis for our narrative about the future of the loop and where the loop is going. And so we've augmented that with other data points like office occupancy, hotel occupancy, parking rates, parking volumes, CTA traffic, and all those kind of things. So we really feel like we know where the loop is going, and the loop has changed. There are fewer office workers downtown, but not as few as you think.
Right.
And it's been replaced by more students, more visitors, and more people living downtown.
One of the reports that you sent me was really eye-opening in regards to the arts and culture. That was the inbound.
Yes.
I was shocked to see how actually many people, because I think the last report obviously was it Q3 or because you guys haven't
Q3
because you haven't come out with the Q4 report yet.
Right, correct.
How did that look like? Can you kind of go over the overall inflow?
Sure. So one of the things that we began to realize was that downtown was changing post-pandemic. Yeah. And what that really meant was that people were coming down for lots of different reasons. And one of the real secrets to the success of the loop is the amount of arts and culture that we have in the loop. Way back in 2019, we did a study of the economic impact of arts and culture, and it's like $2.5 billion a year in people going to the theater, people who work at the theaters, and everything that's sort of associated with the museums and everything else that's downtown. So in Q3, there was 800,000 people that came downtown, and the economic impact was $271 million just for that quarter. That really drove the nighttime economy and into the evening, which was, and throughout the week. So people work from home, they get a little bored because they're home, and they tend to come downtown more in the evenings and on the weekends than they ever did before. So we were trying to capture that, and we thought that the visitor that comes down for live theater would be a good metric.
Yeah, because one of the kind of thoughts, right, where people are like, the loop's dead on the weekends, right? So you're saying that is, you've seen that actually change into more of like a lively, would you say it's there, or is it kind of like still room to grow?
Well, it certainly has room to grow, and I'm not saying that we're not out of the woods, but if you try to get a restaurant reservation at a sit-down, white tablecloth kind of restaurant, maybe 4 days before you're going to go see a show, you won't be within 6 blocks of the theater.
Wow.
So, there's things that have really been impacted negatively by the pandemic, and this is largely fast casual and places where people who work downtown picked up a quick lunch. Those have been sort of devastated. But the restaurants downtown, we have lost a few, but we've also gained a few. People would be surprised how many nice places there are to eat downtown. And that is part of the experience. One of the other things that's going on since the pandemic, and this of course was happening before the pandemic, is that people are looking for experiences. So it's not they don't come down here or stay down after work, just to buy a pair of gloves at Macy's and then go home.
Yeah.
There's a whole experience around that now. And even the retailers make it much more fun when you go in their stores, right? They're kind of ready for you with an experience, not just just buy something off the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really hoping that people begin to realize that, and we think they are, and we continue to try to add to that experience.
One of the coolest things that I've seen that's come out post-pandemic, where the city's trying to figure out what to do, some of these, like, let's call it empty storefronts, is like giving shorter-term kind of rentals for Chicago-based stores, right? That's still going on, right?
Still going on. The city just awarded $2.7 million to like 13 or 14 groups to do that.
How does that work?
Well, that's a really good question. I'll give you the example that we're familiar with. We got $300,000 from the city to do a 8-week holiday market.
Okay.
And if any of your viewers have seen or been to Sundays on State, we have about 200 vendors, many of them people of color, women-owned businesses, LGBTQ, veterans, that we wanted to give an opportunity to sell their wares on State Street during the holidays, not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before.
Mm-hmm.
And so we spent a lot of money promoting and renting space. So how does it work? Well, you need a property owner that doesn't think they're going to rent their space in the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
That's helpful.
Sure.
There's not many of them. They all think they're going to.
Right, of course, yeah. Everybody is bullshit.
But so we paid a very discounted rate, and then we used a lot of money to market the market, the holiday market, and it was it could have been more successful. Yes. Did we learn a lot? Yes. Will we do a better job with it next time? Yeah, we certainly will.
So, question: so if it was 2 seasons ago, why didn't you guys do it this past season?
Well, we didn't do it this season because we couldn't find the space. It's not.
Well,
it's not easy to find a property. I mean, there's lots of space. I get that, but the going rate on State Street prior to the pandemic was like $150, $200 or $300 a square foot if you're on the corners, and the amount of money that anybody has is way less than that. It's not even a tenth of that.
Yeah.
And so property owners, need a certain amount of money, frankly, to turn the lights on, to cover the insurance if they put a tenant in there, and some of these, the dollars that we have, even with government programs, isn't sufficient to even cover the operating costs.
Okay.
Really. Now, we're going to get to a point here where people might become so desperate that they'll figure out another way. And we think there are opportunities, and apparently the city does because they just awarded all that money. So, we're hopeful to do something with the storefronts.
Yeah. And Sundays on State, it's not happening anymore right now?
No, we're going to do it this summer. We're kind of waiting on the city to give us some dates in July and August. The first time we did that, it was post-pandemic. It was to get people to come back. We did 8 of them, 8 Sundays. Just about killed the staff here.
Yeah, right.
At Chicago Loop Alliance. And then a couple years ago, we did 4, and now we're doing 2.
Okay.
And the reason is because there's so much else going on downtown. We can't get 8 Sundays. Between NASCAR and Lollapalooza and the Blues Festival and the Gospel Festival. I mean, there's just so many things that are already great and going on. We don't need to do it. We originally did it because we thought we needed to do it to get people to come back down to State Street. And now what we found is all of these great entrepreneurs, and we do want to find a place for them on State Street.
Yeah. I mean, Chicago's small business culture is really vibrant. I mean, it's been amazing to see how, and there's so much talent here, right? In every different sector. And I'm specifically starting to get more impassioned into looking for Chicago clothing designers, right? And because one of the things I want to start doing with my personal brand is I just want to be repping Chicago clothing designers, and there's I see this culture starting to come out more and more. So it's I could see why it's such a success and why so many people are interested, but also being a small business owner myself,
right?
You need that. You're looking for any opportunity possible to get out there, but it's so expensive just to get out there, right? So that's such an amazing thing that you guys do for small businesses. Yeah,
we're hoping to do more of it. It's a little more complicated. It seems pretty straightforward, but I find it to be a bit more complicated.
I've put events on, believe me. I know that it is beyond frustrating and very challenging. Right. So big ups to you guys on that. And you actually touched on something I want to ask you. NASCAR, love it or hate it?
I like it. I mean, despite the rain, I mean, I think it's a great visual for downtown.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it really helps promote the city as a destination,
Mm-hmm.
worldwide. And I'm looking forward to it. I know there's a lot of people that live downtown that were really impacted by it, and I kind of get that. But it's a unique event that I think is really be helpful to the city, and we're looking forward to doing what we can to make it less impactful negatively, and really kind of ramp up the positive impact.
What was interesting is that like half the event was rained out. All of these like parts of it were canceled.
Yeah.
But by the end of it, we're talking, that it was a success.
Yeah.
And obviously it could have been a bigger success,
Yeah.
but they're coming back this year. People seemingly are more positive than negative about it, which is like so Chicago about us, where it was like, at the end of the day,
Right.
it's like our winners, right? We're just like, we're in the middle of it. We hate it. And then the first second the sun comes out, you're like, man, Chicago's the best city in the whole world.
Exactly.
The whole world.
Exactly.
We're ready.
Yeah.
We're ready to like always back our city, which I always love. But yeah, I remember NASCAR was an interesting welcoming by the into the city. So I was really curious to hear. Did you go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, between the raindrops, I went. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I sat in the stands and watched it,
Yeah.
but I was around it, and we've come to know the folks at NASCAR who are tremendous, and
Yeah.
and they've approached us, and we're just beginning some discussions about is there something with Sundays on State or something, some of that
fun.
energy of Sundays on State that might somehow be able to be part of NASCAR.
Yeah.
To be determined.
Yeah. Right. No, it's like a cool like can kind of create
Yeah.
it to be what you want it to be.
Yeah.
What do people get wrong about the loop? Would you say? What are the main?
The
things?
loop is alive.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of things. The loop is alive. It's way better than you think. Stop just watching the negative news about the city. So many great things go on here.
Yeah.
There's hundreds of thousands of people down here that have no problem ever when they come downtown. There's people who live downtown and swear by it.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly centrally located to everybody. You can get here from just about anywhere, and so those are all really really great things.
Yeah.
But I think what people often miss is that they take the loop for granted. That we have all of the government headquarters are here. Most of the Fortune 500 companies are in the loop. All the philanthropic organizations are here. All the theaters are here. All the museums are here. There's everything you could ever want in the loop.
Mm-hmm.
It's all here, and people tend to forget that.
Okay.
And so we would like just to remind people that we we really do have a lot going for us, and the whole Chicagoland area in many ways is affected by the performance of the loop.
I can see that. I mean, for sure, it's a huge.
40% of our city's tax base comes out of the loop.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's huge.
Shocking.
It's like less than 1% of the land mass, but it generates. Okay, let me take that back. It generates millions of dollars in taxes for the city.
Yeah.
And that's why we want to protect it and grow it.
Mm-hmm. No, of course. It makes all the sense in the world. We were talking also about the who lives in the loop,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think one of the other things that people forget is just student population.
Yep.
I mean, how many schools?
So there's 20 universities. So everything from a DePaul University that everybody's very familiar with to some of the private schools to some of the private paid for the private sector schools.
Yep.
But there's 58,000 students just in the loop, which is bigger than the University of Texas in Austin, right? And it's just in the loop. It's in multiple different districts, and there's 15,000 people that work at those universities downtown. The people who live downtown as a demographic, I think their average family income is $105,000. They're well educated, better than the average for the city. And there's what else are they? Oh, and they're middle aged. They're between 32 and 55. Sort of. You probably know that better than I.
But like overall population, how many people live in the loop?
So we just released our study a year ago.
Yeah.
And we counted 45,000 people who live in the loop. And this is what's super interesting. So that is the loop, which we described earlier, and a little bit of the South Loop down to Roosevelt. So it picks up to Harrison and then.
Sure.
So it's a little bit bigger than what we typically talk about as the loop, but it's kind of where all the energy is.
Mm-hmm.
And so those 40. So we asked the consultant to project how many more units in the loop, for the next 5 years. And so they're predicting just 1,000 units, which I think is kind of low, but
Yeah.
so 5,000 more units in the loop over the next 5 years. But here's the really interesting part. Around the loop, Fulton Market, the West Loop, all around, there's over in these big mega developments that people are talking about, the One Central,
Yeah.
right,
The 78.
78, and Sterling Bay's big one. 27,000 units are proposed. Like, they're not approved, but if all of that gets built, 27,000 more people are going to live like just around the loop. And so it's the center of the Chicago universe, and it will be, for years to come.
So I constantly harp on this, and I'm a real estate guy, so I'm all about values. I think the Loop is the most undervalued place in all of Chicago.
You're my favorite person.
Well, because at the end of the day, it's 'cause, when you're talking about what constitutes something that is undervalued, right? It's really, you have everything that you need, but people for some reason just don't either see it, or they're discounting it, or I think the number one negative driver is all of this negative news that people love to talk about. So people have this negative connotation, all this negative about the Loop.
Yes.
But you come down here and you're right. It's like, it's alive. It's got everything that you want. It's centrally located. It's got the most beautiful parks, right?
Totally.
But I mean, like I was telling you, I have a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom that was for sale for $300,000, including parking, which is like crazy when it comes to price point. Like, you would think you're like way outside of the city district, but like you're in the Loop, like downtown, right? What do you think has to change for people to finally be like, I got this all wrong?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a question of time. And my frame of reference is really office. And so before the pandemic, we were getting a little anxious because people were moving to Fulton Market. And at the time, they were actually paying about $5 more per square foot than you could get an office.
Offices, okay.
In the Loop, the traditional Loop. And at the time, some people said, oh, when that gets to like $7 or $8, people start coming back or they won't go because the price is so different.
Right.
Guess what the price difference is now?
Can't even imagine.
$20. Yeah. And it's because people are in the Loop, they're taking half as much space for twice as much rate.
Okay.
So their number on their financial statements doesn't change. They just got less space, the same amount of money.
Got it.
There's a point where that's going to stop, right? It's going to stop.
Like, you can't just be working out of a closet.
Right. So that's going to stop or slow down, and then eventually, over time, there's always new investors coming into the Loop. And when they look at the price point, and they only need 10,000 square feet, and it's $20 cheaper to be in the Loop than it is in Fulton Market, they're going to come back to the Loop. So it's going to take some time. The question is whether we can get that done before banks start taking back buildings or property owners start giving back buildings. So in terms of residential, it is true that, all of your listeners have probably seen rental prices, kind of go down a little bit during the pandemic, and then they just went up like crazy.
Skyrocket,
right? But my understanding is that that's sort of settling out a little bit. Concessions are coming back a little bit. It's kind of flattening a little bit. But the person who owns a property, has kind of taken it on the chin over the last, even more than longer period than the pandemic. And so property values for residential are not going up. And I think you're absolutely right. Totally undervalued.
Yeah.
And I think it might be because the demographic for people who are going to buy into the Loop, I think they tend to be older. They've already had their children. They want an urban lifestyle, and so they buy a condo. I don't know. You would know this better. A young family that's thinking they're going to have kids sometime. Maybe they just rent and kind of do the urban thing for a while, and then they're out to the suburbs to have their kids. I don't know how that works. You would know better.
Schools are always like a big determining factor.
Yes.
It's. I lived in Lakeshore East for 7 or 8 years when I was the first place that kind of welcomed me to Chicago, and I have the fondest memories. I moved in when the Aqua was half built. I watched it get fully built, so it was like a really exciting time to be in the Loop at the time. But it's still my favorite part of Chicago. I think it's like a little Shangri-La, like little hidden gem. Yeah. With these my favorite shot of Chicago is when you're standing on Randolph looking south all the way by Lakeshore, and you just get this like postcard view of like down Michigan Avenue. I mean, it's just so beautiful, right? And it's like people's breath get taken away. Maggie Daly Park is amazing, right? Like I come down here with my family all summer, whenever we can be outside. It's
totally.
It's just an amazing place. What are some of the most exciting developments coming to the Loop?
Well, Google coming is a big deal.
Huge.
And that should really kind of reset LaSalle Street in kind of a big way, I think. The continued development of the Riverwalk, the whole area around the Riverwalk, there's now hard restaurants going in down there.
Yeah, that's been an amazing thing for Chicago.
Totally amazing. Those are other big ones. They're currently renovating the Bean in and around Cloudgate.
There's so many memes about it.
Yeah. I have friends that are kind of responsible for that project, and you don't want to close down such an important thing, but it'll be great when it's done.
Let me take this moment. What is happening to the Bean? What is happening to our beautiful Bean?
Well, my understanding is that underneath the park is 9 stories of parking. There's 9,000 cars parked underneath all of that stuff that people walk on. They do. Yeah. When I got here 10 years ago, they were redoing the park.
I remember that.
Maggie Daly
all
Park.
Like the white blocks.
And they had these big styrofoam things to create those
right.
hills, right, for the weight. So there's 9,000 spaces under there, and so it's all of that is built on top of a structure. And my understanding is that the deck around the Bean was leaking.
Oh man.
And so they had to fix that.
Okay.
And so to fix it, you got to replace it, and to replace it, you got to keep people out of there while you're doing that, which annoys all visitors.
Because it's like such a landmark. Right. New York was trying to take
I saw that they kind of stuff something.
Yeah, it's like underneath a building. I'm like, you can't do that. Come on now, what are you doing?
That's true.
But like 9,000 cars, like who's parking in the Loop like that? That's crazy. I didn't realize there's that many parking spots.
9,000. Yeah. It's huge. I mean, we got a great partner down there. And they do a great job with the services, but I mean, it's you need 9,000 spaces to service a downtown the size of ours.
That's true. Right? Yeah, and then you have the Millennium Station, right, for Metro. So it's like probably a lot of commuters come in and out that as well.
Everybody's got to be here, right?
No, that is that's a mind-bending number. I'm shocked by that. A perfect. So if somebody's like, hey, I want to experience a great night out in the Loop. What is your this is the way to do it? This is like Michael Edwards, this is the way to do the Loop.
Let's see. I'd probably start at a steakhouse.
Okay.
Some steakhouse. So Prime and Provision or Morton's or Remington's for a little bit less dollar. And then, of course, the show. I'd go see Hamilton this week if I could.
Yeah.
I'll walk down and go see Hamilton. And then, after, find a place, maybe go have a drink at the lobby of the Palmer House. One of our strategic priorities is called Complete the Urban District.
Okay.
And what that means is that when people come downtown, they shouldn't have to work so hard to put together a night downtown. So that when they walk out of the theater, there ought to be a restaurant that's open where you can get cherry pie and a coffee.
Yeah.
To kind of complete your night.
Yep.
And one of the things that was not really reported much during the pandemic is a lot of stores and businesses started to close early, like at 7:00. Partly for crime, but mostly because they couldn't find employees. If you remember back then, people were having a hard time finding employees.
That's right.
Especially ones to work in the evening. So even Starbucks was closing at 7 p.m. I mean, who ever heard of that?
Yeah, right.
Thank God we just found out that they're going to stay open now until 10 p.m.
Yeah, right.
And so this notion that downtown should be open and available to you whenever you come down, at least 18 hours, to us starts to represent a complete urban district.
Okay.
Right? And so for residents, that they can get groceries that they really want. Right? That there's a grocery store within walking distance of, and there are, for most of the places where people live, that the storefronts are filled with merchandise that people want. And so we're trying to work on that, see if we can find ways to make downtown a more compelling and complete experience.
Yeah, but that takes time.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, so one of the things we try to do is to give people factual information about sort of the state of the Loop. Our fourth quarter report will be coming out soon. Happy to share it with you.
Yeah, and by the way, I will say that you sent me that report for Q3, and it was great. It was really like, wow, I didn't realize any of this information. If somebody's watching, is like, hey, I'd like that report. What would be a good way for them?
Well, loopchicago.com is our website, and you can come there and go to research and reports.
Okay.
And you'll be able to find it there. It's all free public information.
Loopchicago.com.
The more we can get that out, the better. Convince people that downtown's back. And we're part of a network of downtowns across the country, around the world, really. And so all of our colleagues, downtown Philadelphia, and downtown DC, and Austin, and LA, and others, we're kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of sort of how we're doing. Better in some regards, like arts and culture, than some cities, and maybe a little bit less good. Is that the term? Less
works.
Good than in office. So the cities that didn't shut down during the pandemic have never really closed from an office perspective, and so the Dallases and the Austins are kind of eating our lunch at the moment from an office perspective. But we're better than San Francisco and kind of like Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So we're kind of we're trending in the right direction.
Yeah.
Nothing's trending down, which is great, but it's agonizingly slow.
Yeah. But I think like what you touched on is the office buildings, right? Like, I mean, that is, even before the pandemic, was starting to become a bit of an issue. So like, what do you see with the future of that? Kind of like, what's your hope, I guess, and and then factually, what are you guys trying to do?
So we are part of a national effort to get federal funding to create some kind of tax credit program, so you can convert these vintage buildings can become hotels pretty easily.
Okay.
Or other uses, even residential. But it's the ones that were built in the 80s and 90s that were built. Those are much more difficult to convert. So we're lobbying at that level. We're being very supportive of the city as they try to put together maybe some TIF funds to do some projects on LaSalle Street. And hopefully those will become models for others.
Yeah.
I do, and this is just me. I do think the office is going to come back in some way. I hate to see all these buildings get converted to residential, and then there's no place for people to work. So I think some of it will become residential. I think a lot of it will remain office, maybe in some different way. Different kind of companies in there, different configurations of companies. One of the interesting things when people think about converting buildings, they think multi-use. The top floors, because of the views, are going to be for residential, and maybe the middle floors will be for office.
Yeah.
And we had some architects in town from Paris, and they were thinking about, for example, the Chase building and cutting it vertically. And so the south side of that building, all winter long, faces the sun. And so maybe what you do is you cut the building vertically, and all the from the first floor to the top floor are residential units, and all the offices are on the other side of the building. And in this way, people could actually live and work in the space. You wouldn't have to go through offices to get to your place. It's all sort of one kind of live-work space. So I thought it was kind of an interesting
like
concept.
a beehive.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Because like me on the residential side, like all I'm seeing is the need for housing, right? And I think that would be huge for alleviating issues and pressures. And I think that like if you do it right, the Loop can become a very affordable place to live. And I think the more as you get people to come in, right, then you get more businesses to come in to service them.
Totally.
And everything just kind of fixes itself.
Yes, that is totally right.
But I will say, like, I've been a part of at least just seeing the difficulties of getting just to the place, because the amount of money that it costs for these conversions, right? And people are smart. I mean, like, the economics apparently just aren't working out to the point of the benefit on the back end. So you're right. Like, the benefit has to be started off by government funds and
some kind of incentive program is necessary. I mean, everybody agrees with that across the country. And so we're hoping to get some federal legislation, and I know the mayor here and the administration, the new administration, is kind of on that.
Yeah, I mean, they just cut some red tape. I saw that. I mean, he's really trying.
Right, cut some red tape, and then one of our other strategic priorities is that the Loop is everyone's neighborhood, and so we're very supportive of this notion that affordable housing has to be part of the housing answer. Yeah, we don't need to build more unaffordable housing. Our study that we released last year, I want to say that 1% of the units in the downtown 45,000 are affordable.
Wow.
1%.
Yeah.
So we're not exactly everyone's neighbor.
Yeah. Right.
And so we got a ways to go, and we want to be supportive of that.
Yeah.
And provide housing that people, that doesn't take all of their lunch money.
Yeah.
To live there.
No, that's really, really good. And how long have you been with the Chicago Loop Alliance?
I've been here since November of 2012, so almost, I guess, 11 years. Yikes.
And how have you seen it? How have you seen the loop change?
Well, I was when I got here, it was sort of just post-recession.
Okay.
And so we were doing studies, like these residential studies, and all of the loop indicators were down when I first got here.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly the Chicago as a major American city just took off. And so before the pandemic, all of those data points, hotel occupancy,
Mm-hmm.
rates, employment, all of those numbers were really high. Like I didn't know how much higher they could get, really. I mean, it was amazing the things that were going on and what people were doing in the buildings that they were building, and buildings that were trading for hundreds of millions of dollars. And of course, all of that kind of came to a screeching halt. And so what I've noticed, and I've been in the business 30 years, is the pandemic really changed behavior.
Yeah.
Not just work from home,
Mm-hmm.
but people come down in the evenings now. They're here because we have pedestrian counters. So they're here in the evenings now. They're here on the weekends, right? And I think downtown has a competitive advantage because while you can work from home, and you should maybe work from home if you like, you can't go to live theater at home.
Yep.
I mean, you got to come downtown for something,
I see that,
right?
yeah.
So our hope is to kind of keep the loop top of mind for people, not just downtown that work here and our members, but people more broadly. So we are trying to influence, the media coverage of what's going on downtown and really highlighting the good stories. I mean, companies, believe it or not, companies are taking 20, 30,000 square feet. There's 3 new companies on State Street that weren't there before that are now above Macy's.
It's like, why don't we know about that? Like the negative news just overwhelmed. It's like, it's so much more, people love it to listen to it more. Like negative is like sells so much better than positive.
So much better. Right.
Yeah. We got to change that.
Yep, totally.
I'm trying.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, hey, thank you so much for taking the time.
Happy to.
Yeah, no, this was fantastic. And so the ways to get in touch with you guys, I think you guys are Chicago Loop on Instagram, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
But your website is
loopchicago.com.
Loop Chicago. So it's either Loop Chicago on Instagram or Chicago Loop. So it's one of those two. And then they have a lot of good information over there. But listen, it's like people need to stop listening to the news and just come down and see for themselves because it is a lot of fun. I mean, I have every single time I come down here, it's always a good time.
Yes. And it's a beautiful city, and it's their city. And, they have an opportunity to come down and be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways we, restore it to its grandeur is just by being in it.
Right.
The best way to increase everybody's safety is for everybody to be here.
Yeah.
So we invite them to come down and check it out.
One last question. Have you ever been into to those famed underground tunnels that expand throughout the loop?
I have not.
Yeah.
I've heard about them.
Yeah.
No, I have not.
I think everyone
Have
talks
you?
about it. I've never been. It's always one of those things like, did you know there is? It's like, but is there though? Like, it's just one of those, I don't know, hoax stories.
No, I think there are.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what flooded in '96.
Right.
I think, right.
That's right.
Right. I'd like to get down to see the station that was never completed that's underneath the train. What's that called? It was supposed to be they call it the superstation.
Okay.
And it's underneath, so there's Block 37, there's stuff under Block 37, and then there's the station that was built below there that was supposed to take the trains directly from O'Hare. This is back in Daley's years.
Wow.
So there's a big hole down there. I don't know to what extent it's outfitted. We always wanted to try to get an event or something down there. But haven't been successful yet.
God, let me know if you ever do, because I'd love to see that for myself.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
No problem.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.